Hello and welcome. This is Kevin, also known as AWOL, and we're back with my pattern that I came up with to try to exhaust the single strand to make it get used as much as possible. But this time it's in a double wide. And yeah, this actually took quite a while to make, but let's start here at the beginning. Right there at the loop, there is enough string to be able to make my regular, doubled up strings into like a regular bracelet. But because I've gone single stranded, it makes it wider and it makes it a lot harder. There's a lot more knots involved with it. I do plan to actually make a double wide, but of like this, but have the strings doubled up, so like there's fewer knots, but it's going to take like twice as much string as what's in here. So that's something that's coming up. If you're interested in that, make sure that you're subscribed, because that's going to happen really soon, I think. At least that's the plan so far. This one, you can see there, this is me joining the two sides together. So that's sort of like taking like a singular bracelet that we made before, and like at that point when those two sides join, that's where it really becomes a double wide. So you can kind of do that with almost any pattern. Some are easier than others, obviously, but this one was tricky. This one was a little bit weird. So yeah, the yellow string, the brightest yellow, is the string that's supposed to get used the most. And if you didn't see the previous videos about this, the idea was taking a small segment of an arrowhead and make it go all the way out to the edge and then immediately start working its way back in again. So that way that one string would just get exhausted. And then I could find out whether or not my template would work no matter what pattern I chose. So that was the whole general gist of this design. So I came up with a whole new pattern, something I'd never seen before, with just that in mind. And it turned out really, really cool. If you haven't seen the other video, you should probably check it out. And so after it turned out so neat, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I did it, but I did it as a double. So that's what this is. This is just an experiment to see how that would work. And one of the things I expected to see is when the dark area comes in, there is a shade of red that's in the middle of that. I thought that shade of red would be the same as what's in the center of the orange. It's not. It's a shade darker. So on the single stranded one, that color never actually shows up at all, which is kind of funny to me. But yeah, you might notice on the right side there, yeah, it was a mistake. I went all the way down to the center, which is like similar to the other patterns like this I've done before. I went all the way to the middle when I wasn't supposed to. So like there was a sudden jump while I pulled the knots out. So yeah. Time-wise, I said this took a long time. It did. 175 minutes, which is almost 3 hours to make this, which I think is actually pretty good, because the single version of it was almost an hour and a half, a little more than an hour and a half. So to double it and then do it in a little bit less time than doubling that, I think is pretty cool, I guess. I mean, yeah. Mind you, the taking out knots where I made a mistake, that didn't get calculated in, because the way that I count how much time it takes is by adding up all of the videos that are re-recorded, the time on each of them to figure out what the time was. So that probably took a little bit extra time. I don't know how much, but yeah. And it's not the only time in this whole thing that I make a mistake. There's one that's like a little further down, like nearing the end. I don't know how, but yeah. This bracelet was started yesterday, and it was kind of late in the day, and I wasn't sure like how much time I was going to invest into it. But I got about halfway and I was just like too tired, and I just didn't have the focus needed to be able to keep working on it. So I kind of packed it in for the night and started again this morning. And that was a good call. It probably avoided a lot of mistakes that way. And I tell you that because I think it's important to say that even though I make bracelets a lot, even though I'm doing a lot of this stuff, like even I can get too worn down and, can't make a bracelet in a whole day. And that's okay. Some days are better than others. That's part of life. I used to think that, the problem was, my medication. Is my medication enough? Am I doing this enough? Things like that. And, it turns out, no, it's still normal to just have a day where you're not as productive. It's just a thing. So I'm cool with that. I think if you watch this and you see that I'm trying to segment a lot, I think I changed my way of like how I'm concentrating on one side and change it quite a few times as it goes on. I think the latter half of it, I may have had it a little bit more organized and figured out how to really kind of dial it in. But yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. I kind of keep changing what I think my focus should be. And I guess at the end of the day, as long as you're doing it in a way that is helping you to not make mistakes, it probably really doesn't matter. If you're trying to optimize the way of segment knotting to the point that it causes you to have to undo knots and fix things and stuff, then you're not helping yourself. It doesn't, no way is that time that you saved doing you any good if you're just going to end up spending that same amount of time on doing different stuff. So, just work at however you're comfortable with. You can kind of study how I do it to see maybe if you can find a gem of a way in all of the rest of the madness. Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. I really do try to just like focus on one side until I can't really do anything there anymore. And then I kind of drift over to the other side and fill in the bits. But there are parts here where I could have maybe have done more on the left-hand side than I did. And I think part of that was just, again, trying to just concentrate and make sure that what I was doing wasn't going to mess me up and make a mistake. It was a little bit easier at times to just maybe focus on the right a little bit more, do what I have to on the left just to bring it back to the right-hand side. Like I said, later on in this whole process, I think the balance of how I kind of got into the ebb and flow of it, I think kind of works out a little bit better than what it was doing like right in here. So, but I don't know. I mean, again, it's up to the person making it to try to figure out how you want to do it, how it makes it easier for you to do it. Also, there's a few times here I noticed that I got working kind of really far from the clip. Again, I've kind of mastered that, enough that it's not a problem. But if you're kind of new to it, I definitely suggest working closer to the clip. It'll make things more consistent. It just does. It's the way to do it. If you're trying to do it like what I'm doing, is the string that's not moving, the string that's not getting wrapped around and becoming the knot, holding it in a way that it's close to the board. And that's because if you raise it up, that's how you end up getting that curl or getting your knots to be weird, is because they're not, the consistency has to be there. And part of the consistency isn't just tension. It's about where that knot was perform. Like if it's close to the board itself, that's great, as long as you stay that way. If you're raising it up higher, then the strings are naturally just going to be a little bit different, a little bit off, and that's gonna show up in your work. So that one string needs to stay like really close to the board, especially like candy stripes. Like that's where the curl, when you see a candy stripe try to come around like a spiral staircase type look, that's where that comes from. It's because one side's close to the board and the other side is rising up as you're making your knots. So, you know, keeping it close to the board makes all the difference in the world. That's something that came from like excessive amount of doing this. Like it wasn't like I just figured that out overnight or anything. This comes from years of tying knots and kind of trying to work out what looks best and stuff. So, yeah, I've been making bracelets for a really long time, long enough that I don't like thinking about it because it makes me feel old. So, yeah. This here is the middle area of it. So like that dark area only comes up like 3 times in the whole bracelet. So this is the second one. So before I forget, I'm going to quick shout out to my YouTube members for making this stuff possible. They got helping me get the string, the lights, the website, the video editor, so many things that I can attribute to them helping to support the channel. You'd be surprised, as a small-time YouTuber, I really don't make a lot of money doing this. Even selling the bracelets, I still don't make an awful lot doing this. So that's where the support comes in to help keep the channel going. So special kudos to all those guys that believe in me. So thank you. 3 hours. 3 hours to make a bracelet seems like an awful lot of time for something like this. And I'm not sure that if I like tried to like give myself like a reasonable amount of pay per hour for making bracelets, like that it would actually do very well in the shop. Because to be honest with you, people out there, like newbies coming into the bracelet making, don't value their time much. So there's always somebody out there making it for cheaper than that. Or they live in a place where the dollar isn't as much. I know that like there's people in Indonesia making bracelets that aren't getting paid very much because it doesn't take very much of anybody else's money to help them pay for groceries or to buy, you know, basic needs or whatever. Like their money is so different. So yeah, I don't think this craft lends itself well to the idea of being able to do it and make any kind of money. Though my only hope is that I get, you know, good enough at making these videos that, you know, eventually we could get enough people watching that it turns into some kind of a regular full-time job for me. That's the hopes. That's the dream. Right now, it's not like that at all. So, yeah, just in case you didn't know, now you know. So, yeah, this pattern here is entirely my own. This was just something, like I said, the idea came from an Arrowhead design, and it was just to go from the center outwards to the edge and then back in again. And that's what that bright yellow is doing. So like what happens in the dark colors and stuff is just fill in of how it goes. And it's the colors were lined up from the lightest to the darkest at the beginning. And that just puts the dark in for like a big contrast in the center part. And you can see the red dots in the center of the dark, like I was talking about before. Like that color only shows up in those little dots. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knots in the whole bracelet are of that one shade of red. And like it doesn't show up at all in the other bracelet. Like I didn't realize that like that color is completely omitted in the other one. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool. It's something different, you know. And if you're, you know, at an art fair showing off bracelets and they want to know what's something interesting about this one, like tell me a story. I have a story. Like there is a color that just gets used those very few times running down the middle of this bracelet, and I think that's the coolest thing ever. I mean, it's pretty neat. So yeah, and this, like I said, was an experiment. Like the original, the first one, I have it over here off the sides. Every time I talk about it, I end up like glancing over at it. It was just an experiment. And it was an experiment that actually I thought went really, really well. And all the string, if you kind of notice, it's all been the same colors. This is just leftover string from that bag I was making, where I finished it up at the art fair. I had cut up a lot of string because I was concerned that maybe on that bag that I would run out. Like it was some of the strings are getting kind of short. I was afraid that I'd have to replace the really short ones. And so I cut up a whole bunch of string, had it all ready to go, and then didn't need it. And it was like, I didn't want, you know, there was probably, I don't know now, 9, 12, maybe 12 different bobbins all wound up with each of the colors. Yeah, there was a lot. And so I tried to use up with, you know, various bracelets, still had a bunch left over. So like that turned into this double. And then I've got a kumi set up to do one that will be just like this, but the strings are double the thickness. So that should go faster because there's fewer knots. So yeah, that's kind of cool. That should be an interesting looking one. It'll look quite similar, just chunkier, and it won't go through the pattern as much. So I'm kind of excited about that one, to be honest. I kind of want to know like what's like the time difference between doubling up your string versus not. Because personally, I think that it really is so much more finicky when it's a single strand. Now, I've heard people like hate doubling up the string because they feel like the strings are kind of getting crossed between the neighboring ones or something. I don't seem to have that problem. But I am kind of curious, like, because it's fewer knots and whatever, like how much more time is saved by doubling it up. Plus, I think that when it's thicker like that, it's going to last longer because there's more fiber going into each knot. You know, it's going to take a lot more to kind of wear through it. So, yeah. But I mean, it also makes the bracelet sort of chunky, right? So, yeah, we'll be able to compare the two later on and see like size differences and stuff as well. I mean, this bracelet is obviously the end of the month, so it'll be next month that we work on the other one. Normally this would go into the shop right away, but I probably have to set it aside so we can do those comparisons. So I just realized we're like getting near the end, aren't we? Wow. That's not bad. If you guys have like questions or, you know, want to know more about designing your own bracelets or, you know, coming up with something cool, you can leave me a comment. I try to answer all of them. Or you could get a hold of me via Discord, because that works as well. Yeah, I have been trying there's been a few people coming up with some pretty cool ideas, and I'm trying to help them to sort out what it is they're trying to make. And yeah, maybe I can help you too. You can tell I'm getting near the end. I was getting excited. My forehead is kind of coming into the camera view because little tiny knots and or little tiny strings left over, and I'm trying to get to that very last little bit. It's really funny. I have to remember not to do that. Yes. But yeah, here comes the big reveal. Thank you guys for watching. It really does make a world of difference if you watched all the way through my video. It helps the YouTube gods think that it's a good video to share. So thank you. Here comes the reveal. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, hit like. And as always, don't get your strings in a bunch.